Morning. I'll be relatively brief and we'll respect your time, so we thank you for being here. I'm Vic Reynolds. I'm the director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Standing with me to my right is Scott Dutton. He's the deputy director of the Bureau, head of the investigations. To my left is Ms. Joyette Holmes, the DA. She'll speak in a moment, and I'll allow her to introduce some folks who are with her today as well. As you're well aware by now, the agents from the GBI secured arrest warrants yesterday afternoon for the arrest of William Bryan in Glenn County, Georgia. He was charged with the offenses of felony murder and criminal attempt to commit the felony offense of false imprisonment. The defendant was arrested around 5:35 yesterday evening in Glenn County without incident, was turned over to the Glenn County Sheriff's Department, and was booked into that local jail. I just wanted to take a moment this morning and to thank some of our partners in this case who have assisted us to this point of the investigation. Of course, the Glenn County Sheriff's Department for their assistance yesterday, along with the Georgia State Patrol and the FBI. I also want to take a moment on behalf of the Bureau to thank the Cobb District Attorney's Office and Ms. Holmes to my left for their involvement and assistance throughout the course of this investigation once they became involved. I want to take a moment as well on a little bit more of a personal note and thank the Arbery family for their patience, and thank the city of Brunswick and Glenn County and the state of Georgia and the citizens here for their patience as well. As most of you will recall who've been following this case, the GBI was requested to become involved. I think today's our 16th day of the investigation. When we first became involved, we respectfully requested the citizens of Brunswick, Glenn County, and the state of Georgia, and to some extent this country, to grant us some patience to allow us to conduct the investigation. That's been done, and I want to tell you on behalf of this Bureau, we sincerely appreciate that. It wasn't an easy thing to ask. When we became involved, we knew the case was already over 2 months old. It was not that way to this Bureau because May 6th was our first day of hitting the ground running, investigating the case, but we certainly realized it was a case that had been around a while. It was a case that has generated a great deal of emotion and passion, and we respect that. And so I cannot begin to tell you from the bottom of our heart as an agency how much we appreciate the city, the county, the state, and to some extent this country granting this agency the ability and the patience to do our job. Also, if you will indulge me just a moment, I want to thank the agents of the GBI for their disciplined, methodical approach in this case. I'm very proud of the agents who've worked virtually non-stop since the morning of May 6th in conducting this investigation. As I said a moment ago, this is our 16th day of conducting the investigation. I'm very proud of the agents who I work with day in and day out. As I told you back when I stood before you 2 weeks ago today, we intended on turning over every stone in this case. The agents have done that, and I'm very, very proud of the work they're doing, and I appreciate them. Procedurally, what will happen at this point, we have a few more things to do in the course of the investigation. I'm not sure how long it will take us to do those, but it should be a relatively short period of time. Once we do that and we have the investigation buttoned down, we will turn that file over to Ms. Holmes and her staff. I'll let her speak in a moment procedurally what would be the next step for them. After she gets through speaking, I'll certainly make myself available to answer questions. I do want to give you a general reminder that this is an active, ongoing murder investigation. I cannot and will not speak factually about the case. I can't. This case eventually is going to be tried in a court of law. It cannot be tried out here in the open. It has to be tried in the sterile environment of a courtroom, and so I respect that and appreciate that. Questions about procedure, process, things of that nature, I will do everything I can to answer those questions, but I did want to just give you that reminder that I'm restricted from addressing the facts of the case. Those will come out in a court of law. So again, thank you for your time this morning. I'll have Ms. Holmes speak, and then I'll make myself available for any questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joyette Holmes, the District Attorney for the Cobb Judicial Circuit. Our office will be handling the prosecution of the case against those who are charged in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. We have been grateful for the confidence that the Attorney General, Chris Carr, has put in our office to handle this case. As we've said before in our previous statements, that we are going to make sure that we find justice in this case. We know that we have a broken family and a broken community down in Brunswick. Now, I do ask, I know that there are a lot of people who have questions about next steps, about the facts, about where we go from here. But we ask that you allow us to try those things in the courtroom for the sanctity of this case and just making sure that we are able to do what we as prosecutors are called to do as ministers of justice. The GBI has been great in the 10 days that our office has been assigned to this case in letting us have input and have discussions about where this case moves. They have been a wonderful partner to us in doing that. The Arbery family has certainly been grateful for the interest in this case, but again, as questions continue to come up, we prefer that we handle those in the courtrooms and in those next steps. I thank you so much. I have today with me my Chief Investigator, Charles Prescott, to my left, your right, as well as the Deputy Chief Investigator, Richard Randolph, and they have been working with the agents in the Georgia Bureau of Investigations to get to this point. So thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity, Director Reynolds, to be here this morning to address some of those and just to let everyone know that the confidence that I have in the Office of the District Attorney in Cobb County and the team that we have assembled to prosecute this case. Thank you.
We'll try our best to address some questions. I know you have a few this morning. If you'll allow me, I'll just start over here and work my way left to right. Yes, ma'am.
Was Mr. Bryan armed? Was Mr. Bryan armed?
Armed at the time of the incident?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not going to speak about the facts of the case. I think the warrants speak for themselves as to what we believe happened and what he was charged. Not being disrespectful, I'm just not comfortable speaking on that. Yes, ma'am.
What's the status of the investigation into the prosecutor?
The question is what the status is regarding the investigation that we've been asked to do about potential prosecutorial misconduct. As you recall, we were asked by the Attorney General's office to conduct a separate and distinct investigation into that. The Bureau is doing that. I don't have a timeline on that, but I do anticipate it's not going to take us much longer to finish it. Once that's completed, what will procedurally happen is we will turn that file over to the Attorney General's office. They will be the deciding agency or entity in what, if anything, happens in that regard. Our agents, a separate team of agents, are conducting that investigation. And again, I don't have a definitive timeline, but I am comfortable in telling you that I don't anticipate it will be much longer until we're through with that one as well. Yes, Stacey.
Are you able to tell us what was the last straw that made you make this third arrest?
You know, I don't know if there was a proverbial last straw. I will tell you that in the conducting an investigation, what I would ask folks to remember is that we don't go into a situation of this nature investigating a person or persons. We go in investigating a set of facts. And once we start turning stones over, sometimes there's one or two stones underneath there that need to be turned over. And once we reached a point, and it was probably sometime Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, when we began speaking with our folks there, that we'd reached the point in conjunction with the Cobb District Attorney's Office that we were convinced probable cause existed to make those charges. We proceeded to do that yesterday. It wasn't a proverbial last a moment of epiphany or anything of that nature. It was just an accumulation of various things that were there and various things we discovered over the last 16 days. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bryan continuously said he was nothing more than a witness and did not know the McMichaels. Were you all able to determine that Mr. Bryan did know the McMichaels through any set of texts or conversations? Can you speak to how you determined those relationships?
I will say this, again, not to speak on the facts. They'll come out in a court of law, but I can tell you that if we believed he was a witness, we wouldn't have arrested him. You know, so there's probable cause, and we're comfortable with that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bryan, has he provided any additional footage from that cell phone? In other words, was there more than the 36 seconds that the public has seen?
We have accumulated a number of pieces of video in the case. I'm not going to speak specifically about what we took from him, but eventually that will come out in a court of law. But suffice it to say, there are a number of pieces of video that helped us get to this point. Yes, sir.
Is there anything you can say to reports that Bryan was using his truck to block?
I won't speak to that specifically. I would refer you to the warrant, particularly on the one on false imprisonment. I think it speaks for itself. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you could elaborate more on the reported Facebook posts of neighbors in the community saying that they were going to be looking out to potentially send a message to people coming into their neighborhood.
I'm not comfortable speaking of that now. I will tell you that we've looked Our agents have looked over a ton of social media posts, and the majority of those will be made part of this file, which will be turned over to the district attorney's office. In any investigation, particularly one of this nature where we've charged 3 people, there's a great accumulation of pieces of evidence that eventually go into the deciding factors. Again, I'm not being flippant or being disrespectful to your question. I don't want to get any more into it than that. Yes, ma'am.
So at this point, do you think that you won't be making any further arrests for murder?
At this point, I don't anticipate that. I will tell you that, as I said a moment ago, we're finishing up the investigation into the murder. Again, there's no timeline. I don't anticipate us doing much more into the case before we button it up and give it to the district attorney's office. But I will tell you this, as I said back on 2 weeks ago today in Brunswick, that we go wherever the facts take us. And you know, if the facts took us in another direction or to another person, we would go there. Right now, I do not anticipate that happening. Yeah, Angelique.
I was going to ask you about Mr. Bryan. Without going into the investigation, was he the first person that contacted police about the shooting?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to answer that question yet. I will tell you that his, I think the warrants again indicate what we believe and are confident his involvement was. As far as when he may have contacted the police or if he was the one who contacted the police, I'm sure the Cobb DA's office will introduce that in evidence at the appropriate time. Yes,
Mr. Reynolds, I was wondering if you can put on your former prosecutor hat on for a moment and put in perspective for folks. We know that Bryan did not pull the trigger, so why would someone like him in these circumstances be charged with murder?
Well, I certainly think that's a fair question. I understand people's concern or curiosity about that, but again, I would point you to what the warrants indicate. Felony murder is a crime in Georgia where if you are committing a felony crime and that crime ends up in the death of another human being, then that's a felony murder. And so as the warrants indicated, he's charged with an underlying felony. He's also charged with felony murder. So we believe the evidence would indicate that his underlying felony helped cause the death of Ahmaud Arbery. It'll be the Cobb District Attorney's job, their responsibility, which they take on to prove that in a court of law. But they've been involved with us in the decision making of this particular arrest. I think they're as confident as we are they'll be able to prove that up in the court of law when that day comes. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Reynolds, thank you. There was a text message that was sent from a police officer to a property owner, essentially urging him to contact Mr. McMichael if there were concerns about trespassers on his property. Is that police officer or are any police officers under investigation?
You know, I don't want to speak on that directly. I will tell you that things that are relevant to this murder case we've looked at and are continuing to look at, if they're relevant to the murder case. What I would ask people to remember is that sometimes things happen in a case where perhaps acts are foolish, where perhaps acts are something that societally speaking we frown upon. Doesn't mean they're criminal. You know, we have to be able to differentiate, as my father often told me, differences in criminal acts and difference between acts of people who have their head stuck up their rear end. And so there's a difference. And so, and to answer your question, if the investigation leads to other folks, you know, those charges will be filed. If they don't, they won't.
And to be clear, are you ruling out any additional arrests in this case?
I'm not ruling that out, but I will tell you at this point, we feel confident that the individuals who needed to be charged have been charged. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, sir.
On the prosecutorial misconduct investigation, how much are you all coordinating with the Department of Justice? Or is double the work being done, or are you all sharing?
Scott, are we working with them? Is that a fair statement? Yeah, we're working hand in conjunction with them. The federal authorities have always been great partners with the GBI. They are in this particular case as well. I think it's suffice to say it's a single investigation being ran together. Now, ultimately, there may be different decisions made on a federal level and a state level, but right now we are working hand in hand with them. Yes, sir.
What would be the crime that's being investigated with the prosecutors? What would exactly be?
You know, if you will recall, what the request that came to the Bureau was to investigate whether or not there was any prosecutorial misconduct. Whether or not that leads to any criminal situations, Christian, I can't say at this point. I will tell you that the request was specific as to whether or not, look at the conduct the prosecutors involved on the front end of this case. We are doing that. We're interviewing individuals. We're putting that file together, and it'll be turned over to Chris Carr's office in the Attorney General.
Question for Ms. Holmes.
Yes. Ready to go.
Ms. Holmes, are you considering a request for venue change for this trial?
So it's a little early in the process to discuss the venue change. I anticipate that that will come up, that motions will be filed to that effect. And when it happens, we'll go through the process of getting that done or not.
I also have a question for you, if you could. Have you spoken to the Arbery family in this process? And what are you saying to them to reassure them that this case will be tried fairly?
I have spoken to the family. We started those conversations on the day that our office was appointed to handle this case. We've continued those conversations along with our team. They know and are aware that we have victim advocates in our office that are assigned specifically to their family to help them through the process so that they understand step by step what we are going to be doing. And so most of our conversations have been about that. A request also to help us to get to know Ahmaud. So as we go through this process, we can make sure that as the facts and the law come together, that we're doing the right thing by the case.
When is the bond hearing and preliminary hearing going to be for the McMichaels?
None have been scheduled as of yet. I do anticipate that counsel for each of the defendants in this case, that they will file a request for that.
Are there concerns that because of the allegations of or questions about prosecutorial misconduct, that it might interfere or undermine your prosecution of the case? And what are you trying to do to limit it?
So our office is focused on the prosecution of the case and where the facts and the law lead us to make that prosecution. We understand that there are going to be those distractions because people want to add narratives to the case that don't involve the prosecution. But we're doing the right thing by what we do. Our prosecutorial code of conduct requires that we be ministers of justice and seek that and only that in cases. So while it may be a distraction and people are talking about those things, we're not making that our priority, our primary focus.
Can you talk about the transfer of evidence and investigative work to your office? How has that process been, especially since there are allegations of cover-up and mismanagement of the case early on? Talk about that transition to your office.
Well, we've had complete confidence in the investigation that the GBI has done in this case. They have allowed us, certainly since we've been in the case, to talk through what that investigation has yielded thus far. But the discovery process and the full case file, that process is a little bit down the road.
Did you have to go back to square one, essentially, given that there were so many issues early on in Glenn County?
That's probably more of a question for the director, in that investigation started 16 days ago, a little bit before our office was involved.
I have a question. Following up on that just a little bit, can you talk about the role that your investigators will play in this? Will they be doing that? Will they be gathering their own evidence, doing their own interviews?
Well, right now they've worked in great collaboration with the agents in the GBI who have been working this case. So right now we're going to continue that.
One more question, Aisha, and then we're going to wrap up. Many people have said that they would like to see the two DAs that recused themselves come under investigation. If they were to, would that be your office?
No, it would not.
Can you recap the two assistants' names real quick for me?
My chief investigator is Charles Prescott, and my deputy chief investigator is Richard Randolph. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Reynolds, could you talk about the search warrant that was served on the McMichaels home, and did that in any way play into the arrest of Mr. Bryan?
You know, I'm not going to speak on what we found in that. That's something, again, factually, that'll have to come out in a court of law. I do want to wrap up and say this, and then I'll let you all get to your business. On behalf of the Bureau, I can't begin to tell you how much we appreciate the interest in this case. I know there's been a great deal. I will tell you that there's been a lot of questions posed to us. There's been a lot of phone calls made to us, and we appreciate the community's involvement. The reality is we make our decision based on facts in a case. And I will stand before you today and tell you that's exactly what we've done in this case. The agents have made arrests based on facts in the case. I'm proud of the fact that they haven't made any arrests based on any type of pressure, any type of social media, any type of phone calls or anything of that nature, and I think that's exactly the way the system works. I hope in the end that our involvement in this case, the way we've handled the case, hopefully brings an air of credibility to the criminal justice system, particularly here in our state. I'm very proud of the agents. I'm proud to partner with Ms. Holmes. Thank you for your time this morning, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you.